How you doing, everybody? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com here with Shay from Prepper Logic once again for the Prepper Trifecta, where we talk about whatever you guys want to most of the time, usually related to preparedness, but we get in some weird tangents sometimes too. But at least we try to keep it interesting or at least humorous, even if it's not prepping related.
Try.
We try.
We
try.
How you doing, man?
Doing well. Doing well. How about you?
Good. We were just, briefly talking before the air. I've just been busy logistically with a lot of different things, and there's concern about a second wave happening here in Canada. Anyways,
they've started talking about it there. It's been in the background. People keep mentioning it, second wave, but I don't think we've even seen enough of a drop off, if you're to believe all the numbers, for a resurgence to even be considered a second wave if it were to happen. I think it would just be an upswing at this point. Okay. In my mind, you would have to have it almost go down to just a low simmering level for an upswing to be considered a true second wave and not just, a up and down. But who knows? I don't know what the official definition would be. I guess any major resurgence could be called a second wave, if it gets serious enough. But we have to be out of people to get infected with this thing if the numbers are throwing around are right. Pretty much everyone has had to have had some, at least prolonged contact with it at this point.
Fair. Yeah, I think so. I agree. It's
like you can only lose so many of these sick old people every week before there's not any left and the problem's over.
Yep. And
that's really what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. And that's it's kind of sad, actually, if you think about it, that it affects the old people. It'd be, for some reason, be more satisfying if it affected millennials. I don't know why.
Yeah, right. Even as a millennial, I agree.
You are a millennial, right?
Technically, I've heard everything from 1980 to 1984 or 85. Yeah. I'm 84, so I'm right there. But most times it's considered, most times it's considered a millennial.
Young man. My official 2020 electoral prediction.
Yeah, that's my last video.
I didn't watch
Someone said this. I can go over here in the video, but someone said, Eric, that shirt is epic gray man. I don't know. I feel like it's more of a straight up Boogaloo shirt. You got but yeah, I do. I also first of all, I like shirts like this because I'm mostly ostentatious douchebag. But I also like that it's a hell of a lot easier to conceal carry with like a loose button up like this compared to a t-shirt, because I tend to wear my t-shirts not loose. So
what acts as like a psychological distraction too. People are like, what the hell?
The pattern, an extra crease or whatever isn't as noticeable versus a t-shirt that. Yeah, and I don't have like really wide shoulders where a t-shirt would hang down straight. You know what I mean? So anything on my waistline is usually pretty visible when I'm wearing t-shirts. So I like shirts like this to conceal carry. And I'm at the point now where I'm consciously focusing on trying to carry everywhere I go. I always should have done that, but I just didn't, not everywhere. I'd carry often, but I just wouldn't do it everywhere because most of the time it wouldn't matter. But I want to get out of that. It's weird enough out there, that, and the consequences of not having as the saying goes, I don't know what my final words will be, but I don't want them to be, damn, I wish I had my gun.
Yeah, it reminds me of this joke. This is a true story. A guy was killed by a beaver. He's filming it. You see this
beaver?
Yes. Violent. Violent, man.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, what, 40, 50 pounds, the big ones?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
Sizers.
Probably average, yeah.
I think I could take a beaver is all I'm saying. I might get some nasty bites, but I think I could get those fuckers.
Apparently this happened. Some guy, it's a running joke that I have. That part is true. But the interesting thing is the last thing he said. Do you know what the last thing he said was?
No idea. What do Canadians say?
That's it.
The beaver got him.
But apparently, true story. Some dude got killed by a beaver, and it was filmed, or at least partially filmed, where you see the beaver doing its thing.
It's filmed?
There's some kind of just type in beaver attack, and you'll see the beaver moving, and it stops, and just beelines for the camera.
I feel like if I type in beaver attack, I'm gonna get some weird results.
Yeah. That's good. The humor.
And I'm not saying I won't watch them, but I'm just saying I might get some weird results.
Yeah, you probably would. Yes, that's for sure. That happened to me
Just
on
gotta
Reddit.
make sure I find the right video.
I didn't know that Reddit, the app. I'm trying to stay away from social media. And speaking of which, I don't have any memes this week. I don't think I've got any. Maybe
I've
one
got
or
like
two.
4.
It's good. We'll get into it, but it's just it's become this. It's a waste of time. There's a lot of crappy information.
Oh
There's
yeah.
a lot of useless information, and I find too with the preppers. Interesting from my perspective is I don't know if you're with some prepper groups or not, Eric.
No, not really. Not out
I'm
here.
not even friends with you on Facebook. I'm
Yeah,
waiting for you to friend me.
Oh shit! I barely use Facebook, but yeah, I'll jump on there.
Well, dude, don't know. It's all good. It's all good if you barely use it. But I find a lot of posts are from people that they'll do like, oh, here's 12 useful knots, or here's 5 medicinal herbs that you can find anywhere, blah blah blah.
Okay.
And it's all these like pictorial things that people don't actually know or practice. It's almost like they want to give the illusion that, hey, I posted this, so I'm
right.
super smart. It's I don't know. A lot of it's just a waste. It's like people.
You think it's more like the prepper version of like virtue signaling kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. Or probably a better way to put it would be that most prepper videos are. It's either some sort of prepper that's using fear mongering to control people, or it's heavily product driven. There's nothing wrong with either of those, really. I mean, but if it's your primary motivation to get attention, then you're a shitty channel. It's just plain day. And some people love the they love to live in fear, I guess. And some of these channels are quite big. But
yeah, I was actually just thinking about that. Like, I was watching some random channel, and it was mostly presented as like a bushcrafting channel. And then I looked at like the past like 50 videos were all like, doomsday's coming, this is happening, this is happening. And I don't. The interesting part is I don't necessarily disagree with any of their premises, and for the most part, these people actually do believe that. It's not like a total scam or anything, but it is focused on that. And I see it too. I mean, you get that way more results on video views, revenue, stuff like that, when focusing on the stuff that gets gets asses in seats, so to speak. So can't really blame them too much.
I get it. There's some degree we're all guilty of it, in some respects. But there's I made a hot tub out of a 1,000-liter tote a couple of years ago, and I put this beautiful woman. So I understand, but there's a point where it's like it's obvious that it's overly done, and I think you and me know.
I normally approach it like I use clickbait pictures and titles too, but I normally approach it from the opposite direction, where I'll have a video that I was gonna do, and then I come up with a title and a picture, and I'll make it as clickbaity as possible, but only relating to what I was already going to do. I don't start with, how can I get the most people to my channel? You know what I mean? I just try to maximize the video and the material that was already going to be
That's a good way to do it. And I think back to the original point with the virtual signaling, as you were suggesting, is that it's more about people will spend time watching, some idiot paranoid mind, we'll call him as an example, just ramble, just not really teach anything, not really offer insightful intellectual forethought or philosophies or anything like that. Just say, it's all going to end. We're all going to die. Blah, blah, get your shit together. And people equate that to learning.
They feel like they've done something. They feel like just by watching these videos, they're like, yes, I'm right. I know it's coming. When that in and of itself doesn't help you. You know what I mean? If anything, it could handicap you in a lot of sense, because either, like you said, you feel like you've already done something. You won't take 100% rational look at the situation if you've already decided what's going to happen, so to speak. There was an interesting study I saw a while back where it's kind of only sub-related, but they're talking about people announcing something like losing weight. They're saying like announcing it publicly, like I'm going to start eating clean, like just the fact of announcing it feels like you've done something, and those people were less likely to actually productively accomplish whatever the goal was, because they've already been like, did it, you know what I mean? Like, huzzah, I started my journey kind of thing. Just by announcing it, they felt like got like a dopamine rush or whatever. They felt like I'm on the path kind of thing, even though they literally hadn't actually done anything towards that goal yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some element of that in that, like watching these types of videos, because
Yes.
people, I think there's some group of people that wants to feel like it's hopeless, so they shouldn't bother. Like, oh, it's all going to go to shit. Because I even get comments like that. I'm sure you do. Like, what if this happens? And like, I have a way to stop 55 armed raiders if they come to my house. Like, what if 57 come to your house? And you're just like, well, Jesus Christ, man, just roll over and die then. You know what I mean? And then there's also the people who want to feel like they're not wasting their time and they want to be proven right. So they just constantly watch these videos like, yeah, the sucker's up there. I'm smarter than all them. And this is just obviously a generalization for small groups within. And I would say most of these people are not actually hardcore preppers. They're not people that if you went to their house, they really would be squared away in all these areas. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So.
Yeah, and interestingly too, conversely as well, there's a lot of people that are. I've touched on this a few times. Which is, if I could remove the channel and everything, I'd go gray man. I wouldn't talk to anybody or mention anything preparedness wise. So in contrast too, there's a lot of people that are probably, some of them watching now too, where they don't speak to their family or their workers, neighbors, anything, and they are solid preppers. They're right into it. They know they have the skills, and they've got some knowledge, and they've got some firepower, and they've got some resources, and you know. And that's a good place to be. And they don't put their name on social media or Facebook or in YouTube, or it's just, you know, Mark in LA as an example, right? Like, who the fuck? No offense, Mark.
Right, but no, we don't know who he is exactly. Yeah, he's just
exactly. It's just another person, right? Evil blonde one.
She still doesn't believe that the rabbit's alive.
Oh yeah, actually, he's
produced the bunny.
Yeah.
Someone asked me what my EDC is, and now I'm trying to find the. So most of the time, my EDC is really straightforward. I've kind of pared it down over the years, but just because I don't use a lot of those things too often. But my primary EDC is I've always got a knife on me of some kind. I just can't go without it. I feel totally naked. Wallet, phone. My keys have like a self-defense tool on there. And then lately, I've been trying to carry the firearm everywhere, pretty much everywhere. But beyond that, I don't really often carry much more than that. I'll have a lot of stuff in the vehicle and at home, obviously, but is physically on my person. I don't typically add a whole lot to that. Maybe a micro flashlight in some situations, but that's basically it. I don't go too overboard.
I'm basically identical. I've got a little flashlight on my keychain.
Right.
Excuse me. Which is surprising. One of the first interviews I did with JJ years ago, didn't really know him at the time. We had all these like series of questions. And we talked about different areas of preparedness, and one of them was EDC. And I said, well, dude, I'm not really a big EDC guy. I think is it cool? Yeah, I've seen the guys with like the modified Leatherman bracelets.
Right, all sorts of stuff.
My car, that's a different story. There's a lot of resources.
Yeah, I have full kit in my car. And that's why one of the reasons I don't typically carry on me, because if I'm in the point where I need like a multi-tool or some duct tape or something, I don't need it in my pocket most of the time. You know, or first aid kit, all that stuff's in the car. So I'm usually not too far away from that.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going for a hike, different story.
Different story. I'll have a pack on. Yeah, I'll have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's going to, you know, directly correlate with your specific circumstance. And usually you're in your vehicle. You're close by to your vehicle anyways. Right. So, Browning McCullen, what's EDC? EDC stands for everyday carry. It's a very subjective area of preparedness where some preppers probably have a lot more than what me and Eric have in terms of what we put on our body or on our person every day. Definitely knife for me. It's funny that you say naked without the knife, and I feel the same way. I can't. Yeah. You feel funny, like you didn't brush your teeth.
Yeah, it feels weird, like you missed your like your flies hanging open or something. Like, oh.
Yeah, and there's some preppers that actually go pretty hardcore with this. There's one prepper I bashed up a bit. I think his name was Black Scout Survival. He's basically call him a product prepper because all he does is sell products on his channel. He did this a couple years ago, Eric. We had like a bag of EDC gear, and he's going through it. It weighs 40 pounds, and I'm thinking, okay, well that's cool. But I guess, but I mean, like,
the way I assess it is you have to come up with sort of a blend between how often you would use whatever it was and how serious it would be if you needed it and didn't have it. And most of those things, the vast majority, fall under the regardless of how often you might need it, that it's not going to be that serious if you're without it. And most of the time, you're not going to need it that often. So if I need something incredibly often, I might carry it, even if not having it, it's not that serious. But or if it's super, super serious, I'll carry it even if I don't need it that often, like the firearm. But in the middle, you know, there's not like I was watching, I don't know if you've heard of the Nut and Fancy channel. It's been around forever. Another gear, not even really prepping, but and he was talking about his EDC stuff one time, and he carries like all cargo pockets just loaded with stuff, including like a MRE spoon. And I'm just like, what's the point?
Wow.
Like, I get it, but like, how many times in my life I've been like, fuck, I need a spoon? A couple. I mean, a couple. It's happened. But like, what are the consequences? Nothing. You know, what are the compare that to like the pain in the ass of carrying a spoon around with you day in, day out. You know what I mean? Versus something like a knife, there's plenty of scenarios I can come up with where not only do I use it fairly regularly, there's a lot of situations where it would be dire to not have it. Like I read an article about a woman's burqa thing getting caught in an escalator. I think that was in Canada actually. Died. You know, if her or anyone around her had a knife, they could have blasted through that fabric and possibly saved her life. You know, or even just opening packages and all the minor stuff. Same with a firearm. I've never had to use one in self-defense, but if I do, not having would be incredibly bad. Sure. So that's how, like, just like I've done the video the one time about major preparedness scenarios, you kind of have the 4 quadrants, where on one axis you have the probability of it happening, and on the other axis you have the severity. You got to find that zone where it kind of meets, where the probability is high enough and the severity is high enough that it's worth carrying that stuff with you. And most of the EDC stuff that people have just doesn't meet either of those, I would say. So it's just extra weight to carry around.
Interesting. So the quadrant and the opposite of probability and severity would be like unlikely, and then would it be
right? So you have like low likelihood and low severity.
Right. Got it.
Then you have like high likelihood and high severity, which luckily not many things fall in that. If you're in a situation you would have to have a fairly dangerous job, like a policeman or something, to be in a situation where you have a high likelihood of highly dangerous things happening to you. You know, or maybe like a long haul fisherman or something like that. And then you want to prepare specifically for those items. But for most people, there's things that are incredibly common but not dangerous, and you can go ahead and prepare for those just because they're happening all the time. And then there's things that are not that common, but they're incredibly dangerous, and you prepare for that because the consequences of not preparing for it are severe. And most people just don't have to worry about things that are highly probable and highly dangerous, just because, you know, in modern life, we're not faced with that many dangers that are happening all the time.
Yeah, I think there's a book, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that had a quadrant system similar to what you're suggesting. That's really interesting. So
for me, the spoon falls under unlikely and not severe. So like if you're caught without a spoon, it might happen 3-4 times in your life. I mean, I don't know, maybe people are way more into eating than me. But also if you're not having it, literally the worst case scenario is you use your hands or some other implement, the folded lid for your yogurt. You're like, you know, it's not that serious if you're caught without a spoon.
It's not like you're well, unless you're a millennial, I guess your day's ruined, right? But
yeah, right. You don't need a spoon to eat avocado toast. So
that's so that concept you created yourself with high probability, high.
Yeah, I don't know if I was the first to think of it, but I thought of it on my own.
Let's roll down that train for a minute. What other concepts? So let's give me the context of what. Are you talking about high probability, high severity with respect to what could happen to you as an individual, just in your day to day?
Yeah, when I was making the video originally, it was focused on basically shit hit the fan scenarios. Like, what should we as preppers prepare for? Outside of, you know, the general preparedness, it's going to apply to anything. And so it's saying people should basically not treat these tail risk events as high probability, you know, or the super, super common stuff, you know, obviously usually isn't that serious, but it happens all the time. So those are the things that people would be prepared for, when most of the time preppers were putting the vast amount of their time and resources towards preparing for things that are just very, very, very unlikely to happen.
That's true. And that is so bang on. That is so true. So what comes to mind from that video, or anything that's changed since then with you, with respect to, you know, the top 3 or 5 or half dozen things that fall into, definitely high probability, or possibility, and definitely high severity.
So I think
your day-to-day. So things that people, that our audience should be like put in the back of their brain.
So I think the high probability, low severity stuff is stuff that you wouldn't even always consider a prepping thing, but just the day-to-day stuff that happens to you. Sorry, high probability, low severity. Is that what I said? So like flat tires, you know, power outages, minor first aid stuff, little things like that, you know, where you need certain implements, or maybe like Tylenol, even like basic first aid stuff. really low level shit the fans, like the power outages and car trouble and stuff like that.
Backup batteries, know where your flashlight
All that
is.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. So that would be the stuff that you're going to experience these things a multitude of times throughout your life. But luckily, even if you're completely unprepared, the consequences are not going to be that severe. Might ruin your day. Worst case scenario, ruins your day. But you're not just going to have serious lingering effects. But I like to prepare for those because they happen all the time, and I don't want my days ruined. Then on the other end, you have things that are probably not going to happen, at least not more than once or twice in your lifetime. But if they happen, the consequences are severe. So major bad weather events, actual shit fan events, like some sort of civil unrest or economic collapse, or maybe an EMP, like all that stuff. We might get one or two of those things in our lifetime. Hopefully not more than that, but something like we're just experiencing now with the shelves being bare, something like that stuff has not happened that often throughout my lifetime. A couple times, but so it's enough, but serious enough that it's worth preparing for. So I think the things that are one of the main things that I see preppers always spending a lot of at least mental energy trying to prepare for is this idea of like some sort of shit the fan that lasts like 10 or 20 years, like Walking Dead style. And like, oh, what are we going to do for like boots and making my own ammo and all this? I'm like, dude, you're looking so far past all these other things. Like, go ahead and worry about that if you've got everything else taken care of, including if nothing goes bad. Like, why are you worrying about that when you don't even have your regular retirement type stuff squared away? Like, that's a much more likely problem you're going to have to face. So that's a big one, is people have this vision of like surviving in a complete wasteland, which, I get it. It's fun.
That's right.
But,
and they forget
all that. Right.
Forget to change out the batteries on their smoke detector every 6 months.
Right. Or they don't even have a first aid kit in their car, and they're worried about how they, which pair of boots is going to last for 15 years versus 5. You know what I mean? And it's like, those are good things to talk about and consider, but you better have everything else squared away if you're going to worry about how to make black powder to, when everyone runs out of ammo and stuff.
Booze from scratch or stuff like that. Yeah, you definitely need to have a baseline or foundation of, your communications, food preservation.
Right.
Fire is probably a good area. I always come back to fire for some reason. It's, if you got matches, that's good. You know how to start a fire, that's good. If you know how to play with steel wool and batteries to make fire, I say go down that rabbit hole and get right down to start doing the primitive stuff and the bushcraft stuff. And the reason for me personally, and every prepper out there it's subjective with what areas and skills and knowledge they learn, what resources they have, and I find it disappointing that some of them, Eric, they just rely on, like, they just purchase shit and that's it.
Right.
Like, well, the more food and resources and gimmicky bullshit that I purchase, because paranoid mind said this was, you got to have this item, the better prepared I have. It's just there's this direct correlation. Just the more money, buying stuff only exclusively. Buying stuff does not make you a prepper.
Yeah, and also I think that we're talking about that feeling of like being naked without the knife on you. You know what I mean? Like, I think some version of that feeling is kind of what gets us all as preppers to want to prepare. But if you're relying completely on gear and stored stuff, then that feeling is hard to completely get rid of. If you make sure that you have the skills and the knowledge, your fitness is squared away, there's a lot fewer scenarios to where you're going to feel like, oh, I'm completely naked. Like, a lot of preppers, if you take them out of their house, where they have all their gear, they have all their stored food, they're just as helpless as anyone else. And
Absolutely.
that you don't want to be that person. You want to get yourself to where the primary unit is your knowledge, your skills, your physical abilities. Then anything beyond that is just a force multiplier, even a knife, what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's almost fake in some ways. I hate to suggest this, but there's probably some product preppers out there, and you're absolutely right. If you removed everything or gave them 20 items, the bullshit, whatever, multi-thing, whatever they got, you got to have this, and put them into an urban environment, post-apocalypse, abandoned houses or forest or whatever, and say, okay, survive, make a shelter, build a fire, purify water, filter and purify water. They wouldn't know what the fuck to do. They wouldn't. I think a lot of it is it's perhaps just the more I can puff up my authority with how I talk and present myself through this edited video, directly translates to how much money I can make by showcasing some bullshit products.
And I think part of it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where they feel like they've accomplished it. They've checked the blocks. They bought the long-term food storage. They bought the gear. They bought the gun. So now they're good to go. Whereas probably take some soul searching to find out, like, if you had all that gear, like the prepper setup, and you just gave it to like 20 random people, you know, you should hopefully be able to perform better than just a random person who just wants to also get that gear without it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, speaking of gear, you know what boggles my mind? It fucking boggles my mind. There's an incentive if I get a product. Here's my camera. This is my beautiful camera that my
a little wind up. Oh no, I thought that was one of those like
wind up. Yeah, yeah.
Disposables.
Back in the 40s, Jay, in school, I've seen your videos. So ill produced. Wind up camera. No, it's just dropped it. Olympus.
Broken.
Yeah, broken. Olympus camera. But oddly enough, it's good to be dropped for up to 6 feet. So it's fine. It's waterproof and it's tough. It works with mine. It actually has the word tough on there. So I'm not concerned about dropping it 2 feet here. But that was, where was I going?
Talking about the gear, people being without it.
Yeah, how some people, preppers, will take it out of the box and give you, first off, they spend more time video editing and doing angles with a product than anything else. And I don't know what your experiences have been, Eric, but it's almost like they praise products. I'll try this again. We've only had one beer, believe it or not.
Yeah, right.
And they'll praise it in such a way there's almost incentive, because if I can present this to you or to an audience and say, this is the bomb, there's financial motivation. If I say, yeah, it's so, whatever, you know, my affiliate link's in the description, buy it. But the more I glorify it, the more potential money I can make. But there's also motivation or incentive in the fact that, you know, this company gave me this, you know, $100 product or $200 product.
Feel bad about saying something bad about it.
Sure, but there's also a natural gratuity or incentive that people inherently have to wish to, wow, something was given to me, I wish to, you know, return the favor, be a good
citizen. And the fear that, like, if they do a rough review, no one's going to want to send them stuff later from other companies.
Right.
They if this guy just trashes every review he does.
I did
like,
too.
We're not going to send him stuff.
No kidding. I did. There's a, and you know what? I bashed them up pretty fucking hard. There's a protein bar. It's called Tac Bar. I did a review on them years ago. Yeah. And they gave us a ton of product for my the Canadian Survival Expo. And I trashed them. They gave us this survival kit and this tin, and it was really, really bad. The guy was pissed.
You know what I have done in that situation is most of the time I have whatever the gear is that I use, and I'll just go ahead and do a review of the stuff that I already know I like. But there have been a few times where people have tried to send me something, whatever, and I'm like, sure, whatever, this flashlight seems fine. There has been, I don't know if it was once or twice, but there's at least one time that I told them, like, because this is what I prefer to do, other than if they had sent me the stuff, I just said, hey, I can't do a good review on this. If you still want, like they said, hey, we'll send you this if you post a review on it. And I said, I'll post a review if you want, but it's not going to be good because I don't think that this is a quality product.
Really? Good for you.
And I was like, and I told you I would do a review on it if you sent it to me. I'm not going to pay to mail it back. So if you still want me to do, I think it was one of those like a little lantern, like a LED lantern. It's just cheap Chinese crap. And I said, this is just cheap Chinese crap, you know, and I can't do it. I'm not going to make a video saying it's good. So if you want me to do a video giving you my honest opinion of it, still, I'm all for it. But since you just sent this to me and that's what's going to happen, they're like, yeah, don't make the video.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. And the funny thing with that is you're probably not even dealing with the creator. It's probably, for them, it's a numbers game.
Right. It's some sort of private labeling thing, yeah.
Yeah, they understand, okay, we just need to get the word out. So send it to all the preppers or all the bushcraft people and get them to do reviews. And, you know, 9 out of 10 are going to, or, you know, 8 out of 10 are going to hit. 2%, they're not going to reply or whatever. You know, it's a numbers game. That's all it is, really. You think about it. So
that's what I tell them up front too. I say that when people offer to send me one, if it's something that I'm actually interested in, which lately it just seems like they spam YouTube channels and it'll be like, we'd like to send you, and it'll be something totally unrelated to the channel. You know what I mean? like I don't even know a good example, but it's something unrelated to preparedness or outdoors at all. They're just trying to get as many YouTube channels. But regardless of if someone offers something and I'm saying, I might like that, I always send it to me. I'll do a review. I promise only that I'll do an honest review. I'm not going to promise that it's good. You know what I mean? That it's automatically positive.
That's a great way to do it. And to be honest with you, you're obviously familiar with the AWSE series that I have, and I've been collecting Any videos for some time. But I had thought of being very unethical and reaching out to certain preppers of a high caliber, I guess we'll say. And my background is in programming and coding. I'm very good at making things appear, gathering information from the web, and making things. I could create a website in.
It looks so legit.
Yeah, for an XYZ product, and maybe reach out to certain preppers and say, hey, Jesus, the camera's closest thing to me here. I'm going to send you this product. Because it's worth $2,000, you have to give it a glorifying review. You have to, otherwise I'm not going to send it. Just to get them on an email coming back.
Just to say, be like, no worries, it's good.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I wonder how many would.
If that happened to me, I would, if I was interested in dealing with a company that even said that, which I would already be kind of wary. But if I was I would say the same thing. I'd be like, you know what, I'll take it. I'm gonna do an honest review. If it's not good, I'll send it back and we'll post it or whatever.
That's ethical. But
that's the only way to really do it.
Well, the fact that you've gone out of your way to contact the company back and say, look, I'm going to give it a shitty review, is enough in my books. But the long and the short of it, there are some preppers out there I know will. Oh yeah, send it away.
Oh yeah, for sure. If it's worth that much.
Yeah, don't worry. I've got 100 and
I've seen some that. Even not necessarily the product is shitty, but you see them kind of struggling to do a review of it. You know what I mean? It's not based on data. Oh, this is what I really think. It's a commercial.
Yes, thing. Exactly. It's
and that doesn't. Yeah, I still think that's kind of lame, even if the product is good. To do it just as a commercial, unless you're being paid and actually acknowledging that, like, hey, this is a commercial. They paid me to do this. Then fine, whatever.
Sure. And you know what? If you're somebody like JJ that has some real world practical experience in survival, and you're reviewing gear, somebody like JJ and yourself for that matter, you're going to get an honest review. You're going to get something that's real. And having known you guys for some time now, I think there's some integrity with respect to what you have to say. You're not money isn't the primary motive by 90% compared to being passionate about, does this tool fucking work? Is it good?
Right.
Is this in a real scenario or situation, is it going to, X, Y, Z? So I understand the formula or the system with, let's get something, let's review it. Let's get people to attract them to my video page, review it practically, and put an affiliate link. And I think that's the key difference is there are some people out there that don't know anything about knives.
Right. That's kind of what I was just thinking of is that, if you're really a prepper or an outdoorsman or anything, you have a lot of gear that works because that's what you use.
Yeah.
Why not just do a video on why that's awesome and get those, Amazon affiliate links? That's the good thing about Amazon is anything is on there and you get the same, lane 4% or whatever. So why try to push some shit product if you're actually into preparedness, into outdoors stuff, into bushcraft, you have knives, you have gear that you use and that you like at least. So just push that stuff, and that's what I've always done.
Yeah, that's definitely a good strategy.
It's extra shady if you're pushing a shitty knife because you're there's plenty of good knives out there, even cheap good knives that you could just make a video about. So why would you kind of promote a crappy?
Let's give a company a plug, a company or two. Excuse me. So that being the case, Eric, what's your number one knife or product?
Well, for example, there's a couple knives I can go through. We've talked about the Becker knife that I like as a heavy duty one, or the Cold Steel SRK. On the other end, I've continually or many times pimped out the Ontario Rat folding knife. It's actually been discontinued, I think. They may have brought it back already. Super basic looking, nothing exciting about it. It's $29, but it just was super solid. I carried it every day for 3 or 4 years. No rattle in the blade, stayed sharp. I love the ergonomics. Just everything about it was fantastic for a $30 knife. Same with like the Glock knife, really basic, kind of ugly knife, super tough, works really well in a variety of situations from self-defense to survival. The Mora knives that everyone's always making videos about, those are actually good value. Like you're getting a lot of capability for like a $15, $20 knife. So there's plenty of stuff out there, whether you want to spend a lot or get cheap, that you can say, hey, this is what you should check out.
Yeah, Mora, 100%. Mora's a brilliant if you're just starting.
And they're super cheap.
And they're super cheap. And you can go up the ladder though too. They've got some higher end knives that are just as.
And everything that I love Spyderco knives. That's usually what I carry.
For an EDC, I had one for years. It was a paramilitary knife. What I like about Spyderco specifically is they've got the big. If you're looking for an EDC knife,
circle.
The big circle.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have I wish I had my buck knife here too. So a folding knife will have, sometimes this is the blade right here. Sometimes they'll have like these protrusions on each side for you to grab.
Oh, the thumb stud, like the
thumb stud. I don't know what the correct term is. That isn't always practical for me because when you're working with a knife and you've got those studs in the way, they tend to get in the way of carving. So I should grab a knife. That's what I should do.
Yeah.
But if this were the knife and the studs were here, generally speaking, when you're working with a knife, you're not using. Let me grab a knife.
Yeah, you're not necessarily going to use the whole blade all the way down.
It'd just be better to describe.
Yeah, just grab one.
Yeah, I'll be back in a second. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. I'll go over this one. What I like about. I've actually got, and I think the one I was just talking about, the Ontario rat knives. They have the same sort of flat grind, which I've really come to like, and. I do prefer sometimes to have a little bit of serrations, like the Ontario Rat has a version with the serration on like the first or the bottom kind of quarter of the blade, because that really helps get through stuff like a rope or heavy material, maybe like a seat belt to help snag it and rip through it. For a lot of good EDC or even self-defense situations, and especially something like the Cold Steel Vaquero or something like that, which is just a gnarly, full serrated, like really good for like self-defense situations. And so there's definitely a lot of knives out there, and these aren't particularly expensive, but it's a lot more expensive than like the Ontario Rat knife that I was mentioning. But there's definitely, I don't know why someone would need to pimp a cheap knife when there's knives out there for 25, 30 bucks. It'll just do everything you need to and more. So it kind of shows that people don't. I was just saying I don't understand why people would pimp cheap knives when there's knives for 15, 20, 25, 30 bucks. Shows you don't know about knives if you're gonna be like, this thing's awesome, you know. Did you snap that off?
Yeah, so there's the I did. I got to get it replaced, but you can see the studs. I'm not and a knife is such a personal, subjective tool,
right?
That it's, my opinion may not mesh with you, with the audience. So the problem with this, or at least the problem in my estimation, is that you've got these studs, and generally when you work with a knife, I would never buy serrated again. You
don't like serrated?
No.
I was just talking about I think because you're mostly focused on like outdoors, bushcraft type stuff, in which they kind of get.
Yeah, and to be fair, if your knife is sharp, then you don't have to worry about serrations.
That's true.
And secondly, it's a lot more difficult to keep a serrated knife sharp in a survival situation, where if you've got a Scandi grind or a convex grind, or if we're talking about like the geometry of the blade, then it's much easier to keep that style of blade sharp. Where was I going with that? And generally speaking, it's much more difficult. There's less stability if I'm holding this knife to do any knife work here. So it's right here that you're doing most of the cutting for anything precision, if you're making little notches for traps and whatnot. So my point is that this tends to get in the way, and that's why I love Spyderco for a couple reasons. It's ambidextrous. You can open it with either.
You got it on either side, so
with that big hole. That thumb, there's probably a term for that too. I don't know what that is, but it's a great knife. You put your thumb in there and you can just open it with one hand. Sometimes you're dealing with something here, a branch you're holding.
And you can just push your whole thumb in there, and
Yeah, but for the record, you brought out your Becker 2 or Becker 9, I think it was.
Yeah, I have both of them. Yeah,
those are both awesome knives.
Yeah.
I'll show you my favorite right now. There's no affiliation.
Is that the Falkneven? I can't even tell.
It's the Falkneven.
Oh, it is. Cool. Yeah.
Falkneven F1. This is a fucking piece of art.
Those aren't cheap, right? They're like $200.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're good. I've heard nothing but I've never used them, but I've heard nothing but good things about them.
This is probably 90% of everything that I've ever wanted in a knife.
Awesome.
So,
and I think I mentioned that in one of our last videos that if you look at the knives of people who do a lot of outdoors and bushcrafting type stuff, they're usually very basic design. Because it's just you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. You need durability control and stuff like that. You don't need gimmicks and you know what I mean, stuff like that.
And you know what? It's personal, it's subjective. I mean, I was years ago. I bought one of the Tom Brown tracker knives. There's probably some people in the audience that have it, and if you like it, great. And it wasn't for me. It was heavy. It was bulky. I think I had the T3. It was It was like a multi-tool knife. It was just I don't know. Tom Brown, do you know who he is?
It sounds familiar.
He's one of the few people in North America you could probably drop off naked in the wilderness and he'd walk out
better than you left him.
Yeah, I know guys that have trained with him, and he's an exceptional. There's a few different stories going on about his training. Very, very, very interesting. His background. He's the guy that created the concept of the Core 4, which is food, fire, water, shelter, and he's taught with parachute, all sorts of military. He's been an instructor with the U.S. government to all different facets of their military, Navy, et cetera, et cetera. So, so he came out with his own knife, and there was a movie too. Actually, what was the movie? With Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forget what that was called. The Hunted or the Hunter or the Hunted.
Yeah. It was all sort of based around that knife, and his character, Tommy Lee Jones, was loosely based on Tom Brown Jr.
I like the one where Rambo makes it out of just a leaf spring. That one's cool.
Yeah, it's actually a good steel. It's A2 steel. I know some guys that have made their own knives for leaf spring, but that's
you know, I will say it's interesting that you mentioned the serrations, because right before you got on, I said for EDC particularly, I like having a little serration because you're typically not using the knife as much, like you were saying, like carving away. Because you're right, if you're doing anything with like wood, making like the lever for a trap or something, you are using the base of the knife. But for EDCs particularly, I feel like it grabs better. If you did have to like cut through like a seat belt or something, it's better like snagging the material so you actually don't have to slip off. Or certainly for self-defense, it really rips in and leaves like a messier wound. But it is a lot harder to
realistically, you're not going to be doing any trapping in your day-to-day.
Right.
Your serration is...
Yeah, my EDC knife is not what I would carry out into the wilderness if I knew I was going to be doing a lot of outdoor stuff.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we are 47 minutes in. Do you want to go through your memes?
And I don't have a lot, but
that's okay. I don't think I've got. I might have a one or two. I might.
All right.
But if
you look around while I'll get this one.
You get set up there. My name's Che with Prepper Logic, and you're obviously on the Lord Humongous's channel. Eric, rule the wasteland.
There you go. We got some spicy memes for you.
If you have any questions, all caps people in the comment section, please.
Here it says a California legislator reduces penalties for oral anal sex with willing children, which is unfortunately at least partially true. There's some sort of bizarre, but then it shows the guy calling Kyle Rittenhouse.
That's bad.
Then next up, we got the same guy who said, I was shot point blank and now I'm missing 90% of my bicep. I'm in constant pain, like excruciating pain that just doesn't go away, both in my arm and in my heart. From the second place finalist in the Kenosha quick draw competition. You never want to be the runner up in the quick draw competition. And then there's a picture of it after. If you've seen the videos, it's like a pizza crust or something you put on his arm. And then this is unrelated. It says, girls in the fall, want to get pumpkin spice lattes? Oh my God, yes, I have a cute new scarf to wear. Men in fall, I can finally carry my G17 with Surefire and 4 spare mags. I have a FAL under my jacket.
That's good.
Like that. It was just funny because I was just saying that. So I'm like, I really don't like the cold weather at all. Like, I'm not a morning person. It makes it worse getting up. Everything hurts. My blood has gotten so thin over the years that I'd rather have the 110 degrees. But I do like that you can just carry whatever the hell you want, easily carry without issues with cold weather clothing on.
Yes, yeah. I'm kind of I like the fall. Summer's nice.
Hopefully, yeah, you live where it's pretty cold where you're at, so you'd be pretty
Yeah,
miserable if you really didn't like the cold.
Yeah, you got to be climatized. It's one of these things you kind of get used to.
It's just weird because I have family from the northern Midwest area,
Okay.
and I just can't take it anymore, man. I've
Tell
been
me,
in Florida for many years, and now out here in the desert, and the cold, I can't take it anymore.
give me not take it. What's cold to you?
I mean, I'll be cold if it's like fucking 50 degrees now.
Okay, fair. I could. Sorry, I got to translate that to Celsius because I have no idea how cold that is.
It's not cold. You guys would be probably going swimming still.
It's done it. There's a prepper that made a video. It's like, oh, minus 20 below overnight. I'm thinking,
right.
That was his video. And to be fair too, like you're in a hotter climate, you're used to that. But to me, it was funny. Like he was saying, oh, it was like it was a challenge or it was a
accomplishment.
Like an accomplishment. I'm making a video about this because I'm thinking, wow, it's like camping for me.
Right. Okay. I mean, 20 below in Fahrenheit is pretty bitterly cold.
That's not. I guess it's maybe because I've been here all my life and I'm just climatized to it. But I could.
Well, remember, 20 degrees below zero is not the same as 20 degrees below freezing in Fahrenheit. So 20 degrees below zero is like 50 degrees below freezing.
28. Okay, so minus 20 Fahrenheit. When it goes to minus, I'm just like, okay, well, it's cold. When it gets to zero,
but that's under freezing. Under zero for Fahrenheit is way below freezing.
So minus 20 Fahrenheit is minus 28 Celsius. So, and that's cold. Yeah,
this is cold.
I've done it. Minus. I've done minus 30, minus 40. I had a fishing trip once. We were up at 6 a.m, pure darkness. It was so cold that trying to open up the door of my buddy's truck, I literally ripped the handle off
because it snapped. Because like Terminator, it shatters.
Yeah, just like it was like we just couldn't get the lock open, and
right.
But minus 40 is minus 30, minus 40. That's you really sort of need to know what you're doing if you're out in that sort of weather, because that's potential hypothermic scenarios. And I've fucked up over the years. I didn't layer or properly and didn't.
You're dead if you mess it up at those steps.
Yeah, you do learn to some extent with experience, and don't go out as a greenhorn or a knob, as they say, anything or close to.
Yeah, my body just doesn't seem to warm up like it used to. Like my hands will just be ice cold and can't get any.
Okay, so 50 is not too bad. 50s, that's 10 degrees Celsius. That's not too bad.
Yeah, I'll be uncomfortable in that. Like I'm not weak, but I'm just like some people are like, oh, they'll be walking on a t-shirt, and I'm like, hands like numbing up on me already.
Yeah.
And I'll just get out of bed and be like, ooh.
Yeah. Okay. It's like, that would be like, okay, I'm not going to wear a t-shirt. I'll wear a long sleeve shirt that day.
Yeah.
For me. But and that, I guess, in some respects, comes back to preparedness in that if you're planning to migrate north or disappear to colder or even hotter climate, there are serious physiological consequences if you're not used to it.
Right. At the same time, like I can be outside all day in 110 and it really doesn't bother me too much. Like I'll have to drink a lot of water, but
there you go. There's my 110.
That's hot.
Dude, that is, for me, that's I wouldn't be able to function in that way.
A lot of people can't. Yeah.
It's 43 Celsius for anybody that's watching, but
I mean, like I'll be sweaty and everything. Don't get me wrong. It's hot, but I won't. Like I can do it. I'd much rather do that than be in like freezing weather these days.
I think I'd rather take the cold, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I guess we were in the right places then. You in Canada, me in Vegas.
I think we got a question for you. Gregory Thompson, how well does a solar oven work when temps are low?
They actually still work pretty well. If it's a well-made one, the actual sunlight is what is more important than the actual outside temperature. And you can theoretically use one even in like the snow if you have full sun.
Yes. Agreed. what happens if we want to get technical and scientific? I'll just ramble here for a second, Eric, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's encapsulated. You've got all this reflective material, and you've got the plastic or some sort of medium. And what that does is it takes the radiant energy of the sun. So we'll say it's a coal. Everybody's had a fire. There hasn't been a flame. There hasn't been anything visible. But if you put your hand over top of a coal, you can feel the heat. That's what I mean by radiant energy. So the radiant energy from the sunlight, the rays, hit the plastic medium, and it bends it. And it bends it so it slows it down, so you have more of it. Similar to how light bends when we look through water, and we can see a fish, and we go to try to grab it, and it's never in the same spot because it's literally bent. Yeah. So as a result of the bend of that radiant heat energy, we will slow it down. It will heat up things quicker. In addition to the fact that it's bouncing around because it got all this medium around it, it's reflective. It's bending that radiant energy, and that's where the focus of fuel or heat comes from.
Then a well-made one usually has insulated walls also to help maintain the temperature. So yeah, you can, as long as you have sunlight, that's more important than the actual air temperature most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, would it take longer? Sure, I suspect it would, but the technology for solar ovens is dependent on the radiant heat energy of the sun, and as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take longer. Your maximum temperature is going to be a lot lower than if I put it outside here when it's 110. Obviously, bam, it's instantly heats up, but still definitely work. So that's why being somewhere where you have more light is more important for a solar oven than being somewhere where it's hot specifically.
Excellent point.
There's a lot of places where it's just overcast all the time. So even if it's fairly warm, it's not going to work that well.
Yeah, and even the types of preps you get are probably going to be, when you get more into this, the types of preps you get are going to be dependent on the environments you live on. I mean, if you're more prone to a hurricane or flood or tornado or something like that, then you'd be gearing more towards certain types of preps like water purification. I am going to share the one and only meme that I have.
Let's see it. We got the buzzing back.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. There's me. I have no idea where this meme is now.
Memes are lost into the internet.
There we go. I don't know if you can see that or not. But it's just basically a beer.
Beer meme?
Beer meme, yeah. Can you see anything? Am I connected?
Not yet. It's black. I see the window. I've made it okay to share, so you should be good.
Here we go. Rock and roll.
Here we go. Now it says you started screen sharing.
Ever tried like different flavored beers? This is like a Busch beer. This is like a light version though. Like
okay, I see it. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it didn't do my thing.
That reminds me of this some random video I saw. This is R-rated too as well, but where the guy was like, he filmed himself. I think he was having like a FaceTime with some girl that he had like just started going out with. And so he obviously set this up, but he's like, yeah, and he's like, oh, sorry, I got a message, just a second. So then he's like, plays his voicemail like on speakerphone so she can hear it. And it's like, yes, we're calling about your submission to the Small Penis Society. He's like, you have been rejected because of your massive wang.
I knew where that was going. That's funny.
Yeah. So
I've seen that with the COVID too, where people have been, they were doing pranks. This is more in March, April.
Oh, I like the one. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about too, where they were like, this guy was out here and he said that if I showed him my butthole, you'd give me a bottle of hand sanitizer. And he's like, that freak ran off over there, and he'd be like holding the sanitizer.
No, that isn't actually the one I was going to say.
Oh, that's not the one you were saying.
Some dude would
then
just
they would be like,
on that. Sorry, some dude.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that they sitting on a bench, and the guy would be on the phone and say, "What? I got COVID." He starts coughing, and the test results came back, this sort of thing. So it was just interesting to see people's reaction on that. But I want to go back to your video, your election thing, because I interested to know what your predictions are. Or do you want people to watch the video?
Give me like 80%. Watch the video. I mean, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'll go over it now because I mean, most people who are here have probably watched it.
So if you're
so I think I put in the title anyway, my general prediction is that I think that Trump will repeat. I think he'll get slightly more electoral votes than he did last time even. I think that he'll probably flip Minnesota. It was razor close last time, and now with all the craziness that's going on there, everyone's fed up. So I think he'll get Wisconsin, Michigan once again. I think Minnesota probably. I think he'll get both North and South Carolina. I think he'll get Pennsylvania again. I think that New Mexico, Virginia, and Nevada are all on the table. I don't think he'll get any of those three. If I had to put money on it, I wouldn't choose those. Unless, I was getting underdog odds, I would. But I don't think that he'll get those three. But I think it'll look almost exactly like the 2016 with probably add Minnesota for the most part.
She's definitely going to win, is what you're saying.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
At this point, I think so. I mean, we're 2 months out. A lot can change, but at this point, I certainly think so.
If he wins, what's that going to mean for the potential civil? Do you see any civil unrest?
I do, a lot. And especially if we have any shenanigans with them being like, oh, we have to wait for the results. If it's obvious that he sort of won, but then they're like, oh, no, we have to count all these mail-in ballots, and the chance of that being done fraudulently or just incompetently, which we know at least that will happen with the post office involved and the government involved. It's at the very least going to be done incompetently. So, and I think there'll be civil unrest anyway, but that'll make it worse. God forbid they have to change the result, a week later or something. Like, actually, this state didn't go that way. You know what I mean? Either way, that will cause a lot of problems.
Ironic, yeah. I think I mentioned this last week. I think I did, but it's statistically speaking. And if you're a liberal, don't hate the player, hate the game, and the game is facts. Liberals are more likely to cheat than conservatives.
Yeah,
or Democratic compared to Republicans.
Right.
So irrespective of what happens, I think because it's not that people dislike Trump or hate Trump. They fucking hate his guts.
Yeah, they're just apoplectic about it. They lose it.
It's epic. It's epic. People are willing to sacrifice, going to jail. Look at the Smollett idiots.
Right.
So if for the purpose of trying to pursue a political ideology with so much energy, it's like, I'm going to physically harm myself and lie in order to push this other that scale.
Right. And now can you imagine that level of fervor if we had a situation like we did in 2004 with Florida and the election and the hanging chads and taking a week? Can you even imagine what that would look like right now if that sort of shit started going on? Oh my God.
I'm not familiar with what happened in 2004 in Florida.
Okay, so it's the Bush-Gore election. And there was a lot of absentee ballots or ballots that were partially punched. And so they said there's a hanging chad. Does that count as a vote? Or so it took them a week or two, maybe even longer. I can't remember to actually say. And it was really close either way. So both people were hoping they were going to get it. Right. And it finally did go to Bush and everyone was pissed off. And any sort of situation similar to that would just be a nightmare right now.
And unfortunately, we have this thing called the coronavirus, which is in some respects allowing other movements to facilitate their nefarious. I don't want to say looting, but okay, look at you got the BLM movement, which nobody would really give a shit about as much if we didn't have the coronavirus and COVID, and things were more or less as they were a year ago today. It's just like BLM or any other hashtag that's out there. But because of what's happened with respect to the pandemic, it's allowed this movement to facilitate ringing a bell or an alarm, or it's allowed them to facilitate being very loud with what they're doing. And part of that, or the byproduct of that, is the looting and the burning of buildings and the asinine behaviors. So I guess my point is, if it is that Trump wins, this movement is going to explode, because I don't think there are, some BLM supporters that, if you were to do a poll, say, okay, do you support BLM? Yes, love BLM, BLM forever, BLM. Right. Good for you. All the power to you. How many of those people do you think support Trump? Probably not very many.
No, very little crossover.
Very little crossover. So I think there's going to be one hell of civil unrest party that's going to happen in the U.S.
Yeah.
in early November. Should be
So
interesting.
keep that in mind, guys. We got what 59 days or something? No, 50. I don't remember exactly. Less than 2 months. Less than 2 full months. So
we should do a video or two talking about the specifics of how people can prep for civil unrest,
Yeah, I
or
agree.
things to take into consideration leading up to the election, because I think that's going to be quite
Yeah,
important.
we can do it for get a few points, maybe 3 to 5 points each for the next week's video. X number of things you should do leading up to the election, something like that. Yeah.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. 5 points each. We'll just clarify it now. 5 things that a prepper, newbie prepper, we'll just go right down to the basic level too, can do to prepare for the potential of a civil unrest in early November.
But I'll just say even more simple, just like 5 things preppers should do before the election.
Cool. Just okay, done.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I mean, it would by nature apply more to newbie preppers simply because at least some of them will have already been taken care of by basic preparedness. But bottom line, like these are the 5 things you should have squared away before November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whatever day it is.
Yeah.
It's that Tuesday, right? I forget the actual date. 3rd? Yeah, 3rd.
I don't know what the day is.
It's the 3rd, November 3rd, Tuesday.
Yeah. It's almost like we're background noise. There's quite the chat happening.
I know, right? So it's good, man. It's good.
It's cool. All right. I dig. Don't want to talk to us.
We haven't been too good about reading them anyway, so they're just going on without us.
I'm trying. I'm looking for the all caps and question marks, but
yeah.
Everybody's just in their own.
I'm probably going to call it anyway. It's been about an hour.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's call it. Thank you. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for joining me. Jay from Prepper Logic and Eric.
Yep, from Lord Among Us channel and rulethewasteland.com. Thanks for watching. We'll be here next week. So tune back in to find out each of our 5 things that you should do before November 3rd. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.